Barely a year after we saw the original smash hit Crash Bandicoot, we got a second instalment of the game series. Released in North America in October and Europe in December '97, it will be a well-received gift for Christmas. As with the first instalment of the Crash Bandicoot series, you battle through the game in order to defeat the series villain, Dr. Neo Cortex. One of the major changes to this game was that you now access each level through a series of warp rooms, which act as hub areas during gameplay. Each warp room contains 5 doors, each of which lead to a different level. The goal of each level is to obtain a crystal placed somewhere along the path during gameplay. A level is cleared by collecting the crystals and reaching the end of the path, which returns Crash back to the warp room and allows him to access another door. This game would go on to become the 10th best-selling game on the PlayStation, selling slightly more than Crash Bandicoot 1 at 7 million copies. It would also go on to see further instalments in the coming years. Another game that needs no introduction. This was a massive project taking 2.5 years to complete and was originally being designed for the Super Nintendo. When it did eventually come out in 1997, it was an exclusive for the N64, coming out on the 25th of August everywhere in 1997. It's also worth mentioning that this would become the best-selling non-Mario game on the N64, selling over 8 million copies in its lifetime. This game had absolutely everything, a solid single-player mode, to the brilliant multiplayer mode that would allow you to customise gameplay by selecting weapons that were used and even handicapping better players with smaller amounts of health, meaning for a more even playing field. It was totally different to anything that we had ever seen on consoles before, and with 3 different settings in Agent, Secret Agent and 00 Agent, there was enough to keep even the best first-person shooter gamers enthralled. This game incorporated everything from the 1995 James Bond film called Goldeneye, with the game following the same storyline. It's absolutely flawless, and you would have been hard pushed to find a review of this game on its release that didn't say anything otherwise. Goldeneye is still as popular today as it was on its release in 1997. 13 years down the line, this game most recently ranked first in video game site Screw Attack's Top 10 movie-based games and Top 10 multiplayer games polls. It also topped similar polls in gaming magazines such as Computer and Video Games, Game Informer and Edge years after its original release. And it's also worth mentioning that Nintendo Power stated GoldenEye as being one of the greatest multiplayer experiences on any Nintendo console. So it's pretty easy to say that this game would have left nobody unhappy on Christmas Day '97. No more need be said about this game, about it being included on this Christmas list, other than the fact that it sold 800,000 copies in the 2 weeks running up to Christmas in 1997. Diddy Kong Racing was another huge hit by Rare, and it was a spin-off from the Donkey Kong Country series of games. It also bears some resemblance to Mario Kart with the addition of hovercrafts and airplanes to race options. As with Mario Kart, Diddy Kong Racing had its own unique racers, who were Crunch, Diddy Kong, Drumstick, Bumper, Banjo, Conker, Tip Top, TT, Pipsy and Timber. Once you had selected your racer, you could choose which vehicle to use and away you went. And as with Mario Kart again, the larger characters would be slower but have better cornering abilities, with smaller racers being faster and more agile. This game remains popular even today. Despite being on the older console, currently holds an 89% score on game rankings. One of, if not the most popular racing game of all time. Taking a massive 5 years to make, Gran Turismo was released in Japan in December '97, with Europe and North America having to wait until May 1998 for their releases. The object of this game was to compete in races against other drivers, to win championships and ultimately money in order to buy further cars and upgrades. Whilst winning championships, you would unlock further tracks and cars, which you could use to race friends in 2-player mode, or buy to use in the 1-player mode against competitors in the championship races. Featuring 180 cars, 11 racetracks and an awesome soundtrack, this was a must-have game for all PlayStation owners. With reviews from IGN and PlayStation Magazine giving this game top marks, there should be really no surprise that this game went on to sell a whopping 10.8 million copies worldwide. Released in the later stages of 1998, Spyro the Dragon was a massive success. that you could only play on the PlayStation. Following its release to Europe in October and Australia in September 1998, the first instalment of this game was definitely by far the best received. It won much praise from critics for the gameplay and music, and it would also later be released in Japan in 1999, at which time this game would become a PlayStation packing title worldwide. The story for this game centres on a small purple dragon, set with the task of freeing his fellow dragon friends from the crystal prisons. These crystal prisons are scattered around each level throughout the game. Even though this instalment of Spyro the Dragon was well received, it's sad to say that the following titles weren't. This would be by far one of the best selling Spyro titles, and would go on to sell more than 5 million copies worldwide. Well, you either hated this game or you loved it back in the day. But it's safe to say that the Pokemon games on Nintendo systems were just as popular as the cartoon and card game series. This game was first released in Japan in 1996, and it wasn't until 1998 that it was made available worldwide for Nintendo Game Boy. Each version of this game is independent from each other, but feature largely the same plot. The object of these games is to guide your character through different overhead perspective quests and battle whilst mastering the Pokemon battles. The red and blue editions of the series allowed players to trade and battle with the use of a Game Link cable. This was massively successful, and would have kept kids quiet for hours on Christmas Day. Scoring 90% in gaming magazines and web reviews, this game was another smash hit for Konami. Both television and magazine advertisements, in-store samples, demo giveaways contributed to the total of 8 million in promotion costs for this game, and an estimated 12 million demos for this game were distributed throughout 1998 before the game's release. Metal Gear Solid made a seamless transition from the original 2D title to its first 3D release. Released in late 1998 for the PlayStation, this game had it all: cinematic cutscenes, gripping gameplay, and tons of voice acting. The storyline to this game follows Solid Snake, the main character in the game series, who's a soldier that infiltrates a nuclear weapons facility to neutralise the terrorists' threat from Foxhound, which is a renegade special forces unit. Snake must liberate hostages, confront terrorists, and stop them from launching a nuclear strike. Metal Gear Solid is often recognised as one of the key titles involved in popularising the stealth game genre. The idea of the player being unarmed and having to avoid being seen by enemies rather than fighting them has been used in many games since. It's also sometimes acclaimed as being a film as much as a game, due to the lengthy cutscenes and complicated storyline. Another interesting fact about this game is that it was originally being planned for release on the 3DO. It wasn't until late 1995 that the development team switched production to the PlayStation following the 3DO's decline. This is truly an awesome game, and it's held every sort of record on its release. It would go on to sell more than 6 million copies worldwide and see many sequels in the coming years. One of the greatest role-playing games of all time saw its first proper 3D release for Christmas 1998. Released everywhere in late November, it would go on to storm the charts and top many fans' Christmas lists. In fact, this game sold a massive 2.5 million copies in the 40 days leading up to the Christmas period in 1998, making it the 10th best-selling game of the year. An interesting fact regarding this game is that it was originally developed for the N64DD, which was an add-on for the N64. In order to release this for the N64, Nintendo needed to redesign and add more capacity to their standard cartridge in order to release this title. In this game, you take control of Link through stunning 3D levels that made even Mario 64 look dated. This game got so much right back in 1998 that it's considered a basis of many of the roleplay games that we all play today. As I stated in my link to the past section of this video, this is also a game that any Zelda fan would still like to get for Christmas today, which I think shows how popular this game really is. It would go on to win countless number of awards in the coming years, and would have been the top of many Christmas lists across many households worldwide in '98.